Horizon Chance, and this is The Court of Love, Eleanor of Aquitaine 2 by channel Extra History. Yep, this is the crazy series apparently. I haven't seen this much drama since, Bismarck series, I guess. How crazy he was. So in this one so far, I guess, this is Middle Ages, whatever, right? Medieval times. So around this time, I guess it's to expect this kind of a drama. But yeah, there's lots of things that are going on. So Eleanor of Aquitaine, basically southern area of France at the time, right? So she basically married, king of France, basically a boy at the time. But obviously they didn't like each other much, right? Growing up, they just resented each other. And after certain times, they just, got a divorce through the Pope. Even the Pope tried so hard to keep their marriage alive, which was, I guess, somewhat ridiculous. But yeah, so I guess he's going to marry a king of England or future king of England, whatever. I mean, how much a person can do, basically, right? She was already an heir to, Aquitaine or something. She married king of France, and now before she's like, 30, 40 by now? I don't even know what her age is. But she's going to marry, king of England now. Obviously, this is going to play big in how much, genes are spread around in Europe, right? You hear about that all the time, like the German monarch, the British monarch, the French monarchs, they all somewhat have a same genetic thing because of shit like this right here. So let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't subscribe. So I know which type of videos to react to more. I love history, any historical video. So definitely comment down if you want to react to any specific video. Then yeah, let's watch it.
1152. Outside Paris. Newly divorced from her ex-husband Louis VII, King of France, Eleanor is going back home to Aquitaine. Though she has to be cautious, because as it turns out, as Duchess of her homeland, she's a prime target for a very specific type of kidnapping. It is not unknown for nobles to kidnap heiresses and forcibly marry them to gain their land, knowing that the church almost never grants a divorce once a marriage is joined. In fact, this was such a concern that the last time she was single, Louis's father had sent 500 armed men to escort her to her wedding. And now she's heard that there are two nobles already lying in wait to ambush her.
So why isn't somebody going to the Pope and like, yeah, Pope, not to be a bother, but how about you fucking do something about this? People are literally kidnapping. How is this allowed?
They're on the road. But Eleanor will slip the net, arrive safely home, and dispatch a messenger to a man she's only met once. That man is Henry, Duke of Normandy, and the letter asks him to come marry her immediately.
Damn, that's some power right there.
Thanks so much to Factor for keeping us fed on a busy schedule. Last episode, we discussed how King Louis VII and Eleanor, Duchess of Aquitaine, successfully annulled their marriage on the grounds of consanguinity. But it does bear asking, why? Why would Louis let Eleanor go? I mean, she owned much more territory than his piddly holdings around Paris. Well, from Louis's perspective, he needed a son. Unlike in Aquitaine, women in northern France could not inherit. And Eleanor, now around 30 and only having produced 2 daughters in 15 years of marriage, didn't seem to be able to bear more children. So he let Eleanor go, and his court set about finding Louis a new wife, while also crafting vicious rumors that pinned the marriage's failures on her. And sure, while Aquitaine remained Eleanor's for now, when she died, it would go to their eldest daughter Marie. Unless, of course, Eleanor remarried and produced a male heir. But come on, I mean, who would dare displease their overlord by marrying an ex-queen of France, am I right? Oh, hey there, Henry. Didn't see you right away. Also, at the end of the last episode, we did cheat a bit by saying Henry was the heir to the English throne, but that was advancing the timeline a little bit. Because you see, England was going through a civil war at the time, known as the Anarchy, a term which pretty much sums things up. But to put it very, very simply, Henry's grandfather had been the King of England. But when he tried to designate his daughter Matilda, Henry's mother, his heir, a succession crisis broke out, and a noble named Stephen seized the throne. So while Henry did have claim to the throne, he wasn't exactly next in line. Heck, he and Stephen weren't even on good terms.
Oh my god, the level of gamble that she plays, right? I mean, after, breaking the marriage with King of France, she's like, I guess I'm gonna marry, maybe king in the future, Henry basically, King of England, maybe. That's a big ass gamble. But she's like, fuck it, I don't care. I like the balls on it, let's just say. All the things I've seen throughout, all the things that she did, right? I mean, there's always been some kind of a gamble there, and somehow it pays off.
They were fighting a low-intensity war. However, Henry was on good terms with Louis, who Henry had finally declared fealty to in exchange for formal recognition as Duke of Normandy. But as you can imagine, that relationship turned pretty frosty once Henry slipped off to Aquitaine to marry Eleanor in a hasty ceremony less than 8 weeks after the divorce. Yeah, those two worked fast. So fast, in fact, there's been speculation that they set this whole marriage plan up in advance. Adding insult to injury, Henry and Eleanor were actually more closely related than she and Louis had been, and 4 months later, Eleanor was pregnant. Yep, that's right. 2 girls in a decade and a half of marriage with Louis, but Eleanor gets pregnant almost instantly after marrying Henry. Now that might have been for a couple of reasons. First off, Henry was 19, a decade younger than Eleanor, and, well, let's put it this way. Both of Louis's daughters with Eleanor were born after a bishop and a pope blessed the wedding bed and encouraged them to have kids, but Henry didn't really need any godly encouragement. In fact, their marriage appears to have been a genuine love match and extremely passionate. Henry was considered handsome, with red gold hair and an athletic frame, and he loved to hunt, to read books, and of course, to beat the living snot out of his enemies on the battlefield. And Henry kept racking up the wins. The same day Eleanor gave birth to their son William, securing Aquitaine for their family, King Stephen's son.
I can already imagine Eleanor parties. Henry's a Chad, not like that bitch. Man, this is not like that bitch Louis. Henry's a Chad.
The heir apparent to the English throne died suddenly, supposedly struck down by God while sacking a church, clearing the way for Henry to invade England, battle Stephen, and force the king to sign a treaty confirming Henry as the legitimate heir to the English throne. 11 months later, Stephen died, and Henry and Eleanor were crowned King and Queen of England. And just to hammer home how nuts this timeline is, Eleanor had gone from a royal divorce in France to the throne of England in 2.5 years. And in doing so, they joined Aquitaine, Normandy, and England, founding a continuous territory stretching from the Scottish border in the north to...
Imagine that shit. Look at that. She's like, she's just thinking in her head, her father wouldn't have been, had any dream about this shit, but I did it. Look at that. England, Normandy, Aquitaine, straight line.
The Spanish border in the south. It's what would become known as the Angevin Empire, covering all of England and half of France. Eleanor had reshaped European politics, founded an empire, and she did it while pregnant most of the time. In fact, she was already pregnant with another son when she was crowned.
That's a power move.
Those 2 sons would be the first of 8 children born within 14 years, 5 sons and 3 daughters, 7 of which lived to adulthood. In other words,
8 children in 14 years. So it's like alternating. She's pregnant a whole year, then like I'll take a year's gap, and then she's pregnant again for next 15 years. That's fucking ridiculous.
Between age 30 and age 44, Eleanor was pretty much either constantly pregnant or in recovery. Meanwhile, she was also serving as regent while Henry was off trying to repair the damage wrought by the Civil War. Now, exactly how much power Eleanor wielded during this time is a matter of debate among historians. Some think she was quite influential as regent of England and was governing Aquitaine directly, while others suggest that Henry's counselors boxed her in, and she mostly served as a rubber stamp even in her own territory. But either way, it's interesting that Eleanor was on and off governing the kingdom during one of its most turbulent periods, as Henry crushed rebellions, reformed the English state, campaigned in Ireland, feuded with Louis, and had a tragic standoff with...
Yeah, I think she probably would have had a lot of power, not just some rubber stamp, because there's many key points. First of all, she had 8 children with, King of England, basically, Henry, right? And that's a big thing, especially for the time. Not to mention, she already has 2 daughters with the Louis, King of France. She is the reason why Aquitaine is of part of, this empire, because of her, right? So I'm pretty sure all these things accumulate. She would have power. I don't know. Then again, it could go many ways. First of all, she already has a kid, right? So it's already, heir to the Aquitaine throne or whatever. So Henry could decide to fuck her or whatever. I don't know. I'm pretty sure she would have power, especially seeing her past. Just seeing the past alone, like how she married King Louis and then divorced and then married with Henry, all these power moves, right? I think she would have had power.
With his friend Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, whose murder he accidentally ordered when 2 knights overheard him ranting about the man. On all of these consequential issues, Eleanor's voice and opinions are missing, though we do get brief glimpses of her and Henry's personal life, because not all was well in this union. First of all, some sources claim Eleanor clashed with Henry's power broker mother, Empress Matilda, and second, Well, unlike the dull but faithful Louis, Henry was extremely active as a lover, including
Who would have
with
thought
other
that?
women, which he didn't hide. Again, sources and interpretations disagree. Some historians claim that she reacted with a detached worldliness and point out that she attended court events with Henry's mistresses. Others point to stories of epic screaming matches, which would not be out of character
Both.
for Henry, who
Maybe
was known
both.
for extreme rages. Tantrums he may have exaggerated for the purpose of political intimidation. Actually, in one famous episode, he became so furious, he threw himself on the floor and started chewing the carpet. Then, in 1168, for reasons
that's
unknown,
just crazy.
Eleanor left Henry's court and transferred to Poitiers in Aquitaine, where she ran her duchy and set up an independent court. While some sources claim she was an innovator in the arts of courtly love, particularly her famous courts of love that ruled like a legal court on cases concerning matters of romance, that's likely a myth.
Yeah.
However, her court was well known.
I mean, the Pope would have gone apeshit if she had done that. Like, this is my job.
For its patronage of art and poetry, and may have inspired the broad strokes of later tales. We do know, however, that Eleanor was also spending a lot of time in Aquitaine with her favorite son, Richard. Because you see, Henry had a really bad habit. No, not the philandering, or the anger issues, or the semi-accidentally murdering the Archbishop of Canterbury. No, what I'm talking about is how controlling Henry was. He would never give up even the littlest bit of power. While Henry elevated his eldest living son, also named Henry, to a position of co-monarch, the young king had no real power. And this wasn't even a royal apprenticeship, mind you. He just watched as his father did everything. The same was true of Richard, who he made Duke of Aquitaine, and Geoffrey, who got Brittany. His youngest son, John, basically got nothing, and had to live for years under the humiliating nickname John Lackland. But even if they had lands, their father
Lackland.
still ran those estates as if they were his, and kept them on a tight financial leash. Also, to Eleanor's likely dismay, he consistently meddled in the affairs of Aquitaine. And in 1173, he finally pushed it too far. Hoping to give John something, the elder Henry took 3 castles from young Henry's territory and gave them to his youngest brother. The headstrong young Henry, only 18 years old, finally reached a breaking point. He fled to Paris and raised a rebellion, sheltering in the court of Eleanor's ex-Louis. And there, he gathered allies, including brothers Richard, then 16, and Geoffrey, then 15, supposedly encouraged by their mother. And when Henry called for Eleanor to send him troops, she did not. Her teenage sons were at war with her husband, and Eleanor had chosen sides. Whereas the only sides I'm comfortable with choosing are what goes with my dinner.
I mean, look, you can kind of see, first of all, if the marriage runs that long and if you're a monarchy, your relations are going to get sour somewhat. But if it's the choice between your sons and your husband, which you might not like that much, I mean, kind of understandable where is that going. And knowing how Henry was really power hungry in a way, I mean, it kind of makes sense, especially coming from Eleanor. Without her, he wouldn't have this much territory to begin with, right? So I guess because of that, he might have some insecurity there. And with the kids, I don't know. I don't blame Henry for the kids, right? I mean, he's still king, right? And he's doing all this shit to teach his children what to do, what not to do, basically mentoring them. While they just took that as why we don't have any power. He's not dead yet. Chill out, right? You're still getting all these lands and all these titles. It was really fucked up. He didn't give anything to the smaller one. Like, you're going to have kids. At least don't be a deadbeat father. What the fuck is wrong with you? So, but yeah, in the end, it kind of makes sense how Eleanor is with her kids, and we all know that throughout the history there's so many accounts, right? Mother has more power than wife apparently, right? Because children will listen to the mother, so it kind of makes sense in the power move area. But yeah, is there more?
Hey, yeah, thank you. It's crazy EC lifestyle of ours. There are days that I just can't find the time. So what's a busy bean to do?
Yeah,
It starts with
okay. Yeah, well, that was the Court of Law, Eleanor of Aquitaine Part 2 as an extra history. Too many shit is happening very fast. She just married King Henry in just 2.5 years. Yeah, everything's just like, oh, this is, even she knew this is medieval time. Shit's gonna happen. Left and right. Let's be fast. Alright, well, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.